Well, Phil, again, my name is John Paris. I am the chairman of the Asian American Group's Endorsement Committee, and these are the 9 or so of us who are sitting before you. First things first, thank you for taking time out of your evening to come and join us and meet with us. The Asian American Group has been in existence for about 20 years. Mike Vaswani, the gentleman to my left, has been our president for the last 10. For about the last 7 years, we've been doing panel-style endorsement interviews for purposes of not only the primary, but also the general elections. When we endorse a candidate, what we're going to do is, in addition to informing the candidates themselves, we also email the lists of our endorsements to the various email addresses in our books that we have, totaling several thousand along the dais. Also, this year, we will be taking out ad space in various Asian periodicals and essentially printing up a slate card and saying, hey, the Asian American Group has interviewed the following people on the following days, and we are endorsing persons X, Y, and Z and races A, B, and C. Just trying to encourage people to come out and vote. It is a primary on a muni race. This is not sexy. This is not fun. It's difficult to drum up support and participation, but it is important that people take advantage of what they can. Regarding the endorsements, we should be releasing them probably by the end of the weekend. We want to get them out by then to allow us an opportunity to get them to the newspapers by Tuesday so they can be printed up and distributed on Friday, which is the day before the commencement of early voting, as I'm sure you're well aware. Now that you know a little bit about us, we are primarily here to learn a little bit about you. Please tell us, why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Sure. Well, primarily the big issue came up naturally with the stadium issue, and that's the big question in Las Vegas. As I was following it for the last several months, it became quite interesting to me to see how the dialogue continued on and was, for lack of a better word, pushed through. And that's something I certainly did not agree with. I was all for the voters having a statement in a large investment like that. So as I was deciding whether or not to put my name in the hat to run, certainly Stavros Anthony jumped in as well to run against Carolyn. And I found that to be quite interesting, being that he was her mayor pro tem, and he was also Oscar's mayor pro tem previously. And so I felt like, they certainly had a trust in one another, and that was awkward. And so I, with my wife, we sat down and we prayed about it and thought it through, and I said, I bring a business acumen into the equation. That's where I come from, is the business space. And that's a business decision, and I feel like it's a large one that needed to be brought to the voters. And we need to have a full, clear review to see if there's any return on that investment. And there's some other human rights issues that I felt compelled to run on, namely the homeless youth. I think that's growing at an alarming rate here in the valley, and not enough spotlight is put onto them, as well as there's a great human trafficking issue that's occurring here, and we have several great organizations that are trying their best to curb that, but I think the city government could help spotlight and share in some of that. Pedestrian safety was another one. So namely the human rights issues alongside some of the fiscal responsibility. That's really why I decided to go in with it.
Regarding the homeless youth and some human rights type issues, in municipal court, Judge Kearns in Department 5 runs for what's called the YO Court, the Youth Offender Court program. That's had a great deal of success in, I don't want to say catching kids, but encountering younger individuals at a rather tender age and trying to point them in a better direction than perhaps they're heading down on their own.
Right.
What ideas do you have to either expand upon either the YO Court itself, or just try and broaden that to create new opportunities to give affected youth, such as those who would be in the YO Court program, something, for lack of a better term, better to do with their time than being a ne'er-do-well?
Right. Well, I'm a big proponent of utilizing exterior resources, whether that be churches or other businesses that might be interested or other individual groups, and having them collaborate to create, whether it be extra centers or programs to assist with things just like that. There's numerous groups out there, if you will. I keep on lean on churches quite a bit, but numerous that would be very, very interested in helping these children towards the diversion. So I don't want to throw tax dollars at it, that's for certain. I think that's usually the common thing when somebody has an agenda. They typically say, we'll find money and ways and means, and we'll just put it in there. I also feel like, you know, the two homeless youth programs that we do have here existing in the Valley are doing an excellent job. They just need a little more attention brought to them, and I think the public would step up and support them in a great way. And maybe they can create even more events, you know, through awareness.
You know, you had one of the first things you had mentioned when we asked why did you run was the stadium, which obviously is a hot button topic not only for yourself but also the city and I mean the region as a whole. We know we're not getting a stadium. We know we're not getting a team, an MLS team at least.
Right.
But if you are elected, invariably you are going to encounter questions like this in the future. What metrics do you plan on focusing on to make a determination if investing public monies for quasi-private enterprises, whether that sort of tactic is the best thing for your constituents?
Well, the biggest piece to focus on is how large is that decision, and I think we need to do a better job of taking a full review of the investment and the return of the investment, and not to jade those numbers whatsoever. I think it needs to be independent reviewed numbers. I don't know that I'm necessarily for public monies used to fund private investment. However, I'm sure there's an occasion where there's something that would be beneficial to the community. And that's what needs to be weighed out, is if it's beneficial to the community. If it is a large ticket item, like a stadium, it certainly needs to be brought to us, the citizens and taxpayers, to make a decision as a whole. Would I entertain anything in the future? I mean, I think I'm always for entertaining anything that's going to better our community, better our business opportunities, and make it a safer place for us. So, I mean, we certainly already have enough tourism and industry and things like that, but we're a great, wonderful city. Can we add to it? Absolutely. And as we evolve, you know, from 2015 and beyond, is there going to be something that comes along that might be of interest to us? Certainly. I think it's something we need to take a judgment as a whole, as a collective. I don't think it should be a one-person self-serving agenda.
Obviously, we did a little bit of background research on you, and you had referenced you have some business experience, business ownership experience, and you're entrepreneurial in many of your endeavors. Tony Shade came in and really revitalized the whole downtown area by relocating from Henderson, much to their chagrin, to the old City Hall. What ideas do you have to continue or help propagate that momentum that Zappos and the other ancillary businesses that have come along with has created over the last few years?
Sure. It's my favorite topic. I'd love to share about this. So, the biggest reason I feel like we're not able to attract more tech companies, because we are attracting a few here and there, and Tony's done an excellent job of building some immediate infrastructure over the past couple of years. But the reason we're unable to attract more of them is we're kind of only as strong as our weakest link, so to speak. One of our weakest links right now is high school dropouts. So the level of education is certainly something a company would know before they moved in here. They have to determine is it worthwhile to come here? Of course it's worthwhile. It's very cost inhibitive. However, they're going to have to staff it from other places if they bring their company here. So what I'd like to do is work with our existing tech companies to create mentor programs as well as internship programs, and incentivize our youth, the at-risk ones at 14, 15, 16 years old, to complete high school. Sign a commitment that you'll finish high school. As a result, once you finish, you can enter into a mentor boot camp that summer, learning coding, design, something like that, UX, etc. And then to take it a step further, get enrolled into the next piece of secondary education, whether it be CSN, UNLV, maybe it's a VOTEC, and they may be eligible for an internship program and continue learning that same skill. Now, inside of 4 or 5 years, we'll actually have raised up the bar of our workforce and have a marketable workforce with higher paying jobs and attract even more tech companies. So that just builds a sustainable economy around our tourism and gaming industry.
Are there existing groups that are doing this form of internship and mentoring?
I think they're done on an individual basis. I may not be aware.
So there's no public entity that's doing it for the betterment of these youth?
Well, the interesting part, being the municipal part of just Las Vegas, we obviously are not Clark County School District, and we don't have a say in the matter. But how would we influence education? And I think as trying to be a leader in our community, we need to find ways creatively to work with them. And I think by creating those incentive programs, by our city officials and administrators going into the schools and saying, hey, here's a contract. I know it's not fun to be in high school when you're 14 or 15, or you have no hope or dreams or what have you. If you do, here's the incentive. We dangle the carrot for them and incentivize them to finish it out. So I don't know if there's any current existing groups doing it. I know our government doesn't, but I know that certainly some individual companies do that.
How feasible is that?
Well, I don't see it as being a big cost, if any. Frankly, all the cost is passed on to the businesses, and quite frankly, that's a benefit to a company of that size. Because farming out employees, as you know, costs quite a bit. It can cost $10,000, $15,000 to find the right child out of school. So if they're mentoring them through and training them alongside their education as they grow, it could be a nil cost for them, and end up with an excellent employee that's already in an existing target location.
Yeah, because one of the hindrances is really the cost of getting through a tech school or tech type training. And if the kids have no money to get into it, and yet you want a community that's tech savvy, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. And so unless somebody steps up to the plate and says this is going to happen.
That's right. But can I respond to that? Well, so my stepson is 22, and last month he just graduated from St. John's University in Queens, New York. He graduated with network security. He's a hacker, to say the least. And he returned back home with us in May to seek employment, because I encouraged him to come here, find a startup, take a lesser wage. It's a great economy to live in, etc. And he did so. He found a little spot here. He worked about 7 months with a little local startup that was really, really small. And he really kind of outdid it. He outgrew the market, so to speak, for where he was at and his education level. Like his job was done after about 6 months. So 2 weeks ago, he took off back to New York to find employment.
They either go to New York or California.
Yeah, same thing we're facing in the health industry. Yeah. So we need to find a way to work with these companies. And, Zappos is attached to Amazon. There's no reason why we can't funnel our way through, work our way through to find ways. Maybe one of their departments comes over and works and mentors. We've got Tony's stuff. We set up the downtown project, the work in progress office. I utilize that as well. It's where I office. And, there's meeting spaces there where we could create weekend type boot camps or even summer boot camps with these kids. I think there's a lot of channels that we can utilize that wouldn't necessarily cost the taxpayers, but would benefit everybody, including the business and the taxpayer.
Well, what specific ideas do you have to try and incentivize that kind of expansion? For companies, I should say, to incentivize the companies to come and relocate to the city of Las Vegas.
Well, I think that Las Vegas itself is already a crown jewel. I mean, if you want to move your company here, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant move. The cost of living here is great. The cost of labor here is great. So there's no reason that's hindering anybody from moving their company here. The nail on the head really is the labor force. So maybe we could partner in the future if they'll agree to work with us and mentor these kids. That we'll be able to maybe give them more land space or trade out in the future, as long as it's a longer term agreement. We can't just give them something ahead of time. If we're willing to partner with something that will bring us a return, I think that's something to be explored.
Okay. I'm sorry, Kate and I have been monopolizing. Does anyone else want to jump in?
You were interviewed IPR Web last month, and it said, quote, "This isn't about politics or building a legacy. This is about cleaning up the city and going to work to make it the destination of today, tomorrow, and beyond." I'm sure you remember that. I think building a legacy is a huge part of whatever your 5-point platform is. I know that you probably have explained that. Could you reiterate specifically what that 5-point platform is again?
Sure.
Unless you've already explained it throughout this whole thing, but just to...
Yeah, I mean, much of it was in the beginning. But to touch on the legacy piece, and you know, one thing I always enjoy sharing with folks, I didn't know quite how to approach this because I didn't want to approach it as a politician because I wasn't one, but I became one the moment I filed. So, you know, I used a nickname on the ballot, and maybe some of you are aware. I used the nickname LOL, which some people, some people might find comical. But the truth is, what I meant by that is, you know, all these things that are occurring, they're not funny, and I'm not laughing. You know, when we've got somebody that's essentially been in office for 16 years, whether it be the husband or the wife, I think some good things were done, but enough is enough. It's no use in putting your name on a stadium just for namesake out there. The legacy needs to end. I think they've done their job, they've done a good job for the most part, and now it's time to move on. Additionally, my other opponent, if he were to win, he can only serve one term. So this is just basically a stepping stone towards whatever next political piece he's looking for. That's a concern to me. Are we just simply trying to do him a favor, do them a favor? Or are we looking for an actual leadership? So that was what LOL stands for, is leadership over legacy.
Well, if you'd like to amuse me for 30 seconds.
Sure, absolutely.
What would your legacy be for if you were to serve a term, if you were to be mayor, let's say in a hypothetical sense? What would you want your legacy to be?
I wouldn't want a legacy because this isn't about Phil Cory. What this is about is you and me and our families and our property values and our future business sustainability.
And you talk about investment. So what investment would you like to see?
The biggest investment I'd like to see is attracting new tech companies here and incentivizing our youth to finish high school. I mean, truth be told, we can try to act like we're going to survive on gaming and tourism. It's the heart of our city, no question about it. But we can all look back over the last 8 years and we got caught with our pants down. And that's unacceptable. Our city leaders should have had vision ahead of time because there's other cities around the country, especially in the middle of the country, that did not get caught like that with this recession. And as a result, you know, chances are most people here in the valley either lost their homes to short sale or foreclosure, and if they were lucky enough to keep their home, they only lost 50% of the value. So what did our current city leaders do to protect that? They didn't do anything to insulate that gaming and tourism. You know, all these small businesses that we have, there's a tremendous number of them right here. We all depend on them for our families to, you know, continue to have our homes, feed our families, send our children to school, etc. That's what this is about. It's not about the crown jewel every time about downtown. We can always be concerned about that ward, but what about the other 5 wards where we all really live and play? So I don't know if that
Well,
directly
I hope to
answers
see your face soon because I'm going to be in the MBA program.
Oh, excellent.
So
Excellent.
I'll take you on that process.
I hope I answered that directly. I know I kind of went all around it. Okay.
Well, Phil, we're butting up right against our time limit, but in about a minute or so, minute or less, your choice, why should the voters come out and support you on April 7th?
Well, you know, I think that's the biggest piece. We need somebody to steer and guide. We need a leader that has a future vision. You know, as I review my literature and my website versus my 2 opponents, I'm the only one that has a plan. I'm the only one talking about issues. My other 2 opponents are only talking about the statement. Yes and no. So, quite frankly, what's the game plan? You know, I'm not trying to be a legacy piece. This is not about Phil Cory. This is about us and our families and our businesses and our homes. So, I know I kind of reiterated a little bit, but that's really the heart of the message I'm trying to get across.